But how could we not start with what transpired on Friday evening, back from June 3rd, at least transpired in terms of hitting the public as it relates to a June 3rd arrest for Rashod Bateman?
Yeah, it was kind of odd that it came out when it did. Now, I couldn't even tell you exactly when. I got some random tweet from somebody saying, "Why haven't you covered Rashod Bateman's arrest like a couple months ago?" And I looked and I Googled and I looked
Like
around
John
and I
Harbaugh tweeted at you.
no, it wasn't him. And I couldn't find anything out about it. So I hadn't heard a word about it other than that, a vague. And I get or I get tweets like that pretty often about random stuff that you look into. You go down some of the rabbit holes and others you don't. But yeah, it's kind of just the whole thing has been weird. First of all, just the police report is a terrible read, and you look at that, and your first comes to mind is, well, wait a second here. Like he's been practicing, and the league hasn't stepped in, and the Ravens haven't done anything, and now it's kind of become some of the story from the alleged victim has been recanted, right? And kind of here we are. It's just been a very odd story. There's been no real, like last time I checked in the legal databases, there's no real update on when's the next, is there a hearing or when are they getting together again about this? What's the next step in the legal matter? So it's just something the Ravens are monitoring. Obviously the police are conducting their due diligence, and these are just terrible situations where you just don't want to see your player a part of. The details are terrible when you read the police report. But again, I think we all make mistakes. And in covering some of these things and jumping to conclusions and saying anything definitive, no one wants to be somebody who looks like they're not taking a potential domestic violence issue seriously. Nobody wants to be dismissive of that. But there's the other side of jumping the gun before you know the facts and calling for drastic action. And I don't want to be on that side either. So the best thing to do is to let the facts play out. Let the people who need to be looking into this look into it and make decisions accordingly. And we'll see what happens. The Ravens have obviously known about this for a couple months. That this didn't sneak up on them. You'd think they've done their own investigation about it. I'm not saying this to take shots at them, but they obviously have experience here now. There's been quite a few of these in recent years, so you'd think they treat this very seriously and kind of do as much work as they can in trying to find out what happened. And we'll see what the NFL decides, but these things usually don't go quick. They usually don't immediately rule. It's not usually like 2 months after the alleged incident where a decision comes down or a suspension is levied. They usually wait, to see what legal matters are taken and all that. So we'll see where that process stands. But I mean, if you look at it, this type of charge usually does result in a suspension, and a 6-game suspension is usually considered the base.
We had no clue, Cole, about our co-host, that he's a card collector. What have you been holding out on us for?
Well, I don't like to put my personal stuff on the street like you, Bobby, and like I don't want to talk about, but I know all about the jargon, like ripping packs and
that's exactly what we're about to do right in front of our live audience, because we got a brand new sponsor, and it's our friends at Courtyard. So these aren't just digital collectibles. The cards are real physical cards, and every card is already authenticated and graded by PSA, CGC, or BGS. And the incentive for our collectivites out there, we're going to give away what we pull, the one lucky winner at the end of the month. I'll tell you how. Sign up for Courtyard using our link. Use the code HMA and comment your Courtyard username below. All right, let's open this sucker up and see what we got. Oh, wow. There's audio attached to this, dude. Can you guys hear that?
Some build. Oh, that is a big card. That is a Blake Corum. Is that Uptown or Downtown? Uptowns aren't as good as Downtowns, but they're still rare inserts that you can get. Blake Corum, the young man from St. Francis High School in Baltimore. That's a nice looking car. That really is.
If you want to try Courtyard for yourself, head to Courtyard, use our code HMA at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. You can find the link in the description of this video to get your collection started. Appreciate you guys.
Line, and the NFL has the right to tack on if for other factors, and one of the factor listed is if a kid is involved, and we clearly saw in the police report that there was a kid involved in the incident. So yeah, you pray for everybody involved in this, and you wait and you do it without trying to make declarative statements here, because the reality is we don't know fully what went on at this point.
Yeah, that's well said, Jeff. And as someone who's part of the court of public opinion, I had someone reach out to me yesterday, and they're like, "Why haven't you said anything about the Bateman situation?" And it's just so tough because I like when everyone's like, "I got to wait for all the facts to come out," but then when you start going through these reports and you're reading what's put out, there's so many inconsistencies, and the reality is we really don't get the true facts. We're going off what gets reported, what gets disseminated in some of these police reports, and anybody that's been involved in any police reports, they can sometimes get murky themselves. Like there was inconsistencies in the police report itself where it was mentioned that there was glass on the victim, but then the EMS said that they didn't treat, or there was no. It's just inconsistencies. It's hard to really form much of an opinion. Obviously, if the facts are true, it's a hideous situation that nobody would condone. But as we know, sometimes with these situations, people say things that didn't happen, and it gets we go down a road of lacking the truth. So it's just one of those things where you sit back, and it's usually best to just not form an opinion until you have some sort of idea of what actually happened. And we've already kind of seen it where people have jumped the gun on either sides of this to, either dismiss it or to, call for Bateman to be released and cut and all this other stuff. So we'll see where things kind of land. But I would think from the Ravens' perspective, just trying to see, like, if they've known about this since June, they didn't make any sort of move when there were still a few veteran wide receivers out there, makes me think that the team isn't overly concerned about it. That's just me trying to read the tea leaves of how they would be operating. And keep in mind, like, them not making a move on this happened before you saw a guy like Jacoby Lane kind of break out in training camp in July. So, it's not like they're seeing that and then they're like, okay, we're fine. This was happening in June when they're kind of learning about it, getting some of the details, starting their investigation, and it didn't lead to them trying to address the wide receiver position. Again, that's just me trying to read the tea leaves, but that's just kind of how I view it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, Cole, and I've gotten this from quite a few people, like when you read what was in that police report, it is, and they'll do their own investigation. The Ravens will do their own investigation, and they certainly better, and it should be thorough. But when you read the police report, I don't know how you could express a good deal of confidence that there's not going to be any league discipline. And when you look at precedent around the league of other issues with a similar charge, obviously your first thought when you're looking at that is what a horrible situation. You just think about all involved, and to know there's a 3-month-old, that hurts. But when you push it from a football standpoint, I don't want to be callous here, but when you push it to a football standpoint, the thought does pop in your mind, like, really, the Ravens knew about this and they still didn't add another receiver. And they added Chris Moore, but you know what I mean? Another guy who's looked at as a top 3 type receiver. So that is surprising. And yes, maybe that does mean they are confident in the resolution and they have a good grip of what happened. They believe in what they've been told. They believe in what they've unearthed as they've investigated this. But, how these things go when, it doesn't, the victim doesn't need to really cooperate with the NFL for there to be a suspension. So I'm a little surprised as you look at this situation. And, we've come to think that these situations aren't going to get ruled on quick, as I said earlier. So maybe that's part of it.